I used to think that stories about haunted roadside motels in America were nothing more than rumors, until one rainy night in 2014. That night I'd been driving for over 8 hours. The rain was pouring down. The road was pitch black. No towns, no rest stops, no one but me and the white blur of rain against the windshield. Then I saw it, a flickering neon sign by the roadside, vacancy, and beneath it the name, Cedar Pines Motel. I pulled in. I just wanted a few hours of sleep. At the front desk, an old man was already sitting there waiting. He handed me the key to room 12. Then he said, "After midnight, if someone knocks, don't open the door." I thought he was crazy. But at 12:47 that night, when I woke to the sound of knocking on the window and saw a little girl standing out in the rain, her face pressed against the glass, her smile stretched far wider than anything human, that's when I understood there are places in this world you should never step into. And the worst part is, according to records from Mercer County, that motel had burned down years ago. The rain and the vacancy sign. That night was late October. Cold wind lashed across the road. Rain hit the windshield like gravel. The wipers were running at full speed, but it still wasn't enough to see clearly ahead. I was exhausted. My eyes burned. My hands were stiff on the steering wheel. I knew I had to stop if I didn't want to fall asleep on the highway. But that road was terrifyingly empty. On both sides, only black forests, no lights, no signs, no cars. Then up ahead, through the rain, a blue neon glow appeared. An old sign leaned crooked by the roadside, letters flickering on and off, like it was about to die. Vacancy. I turned in. The road leading to the motel was full of potholes and mud. Tall grass grew along both sides. A row of low rooms sat motionless in the dark, paint peeling off the walls, porch lights flickering. In the corner of the yard, a rusted metal swing set moved gently on its own. There were no cars but mine. No voices, no sound except the rain and the slow creak of the swing. I stepped into the front office. A damp, musty smell hit me immediately. Old coffee, rotting wood. The kind of smell a room gets when it's been sealed shut for too long. Behind the counter sat a thin old man, sparse gray hair, thick glasses. He stared at me for a long time, long enough to make me uncomfortable. Then he asked, "Traveling alone?" I nodded. He took the key to room 12, slid it toward me and said slowly, "Lock the window." I thought I misheard him. He continued, "And if someone calls your name after midnight, don't answer." I let out a faint dismissive laugh. At that moment, I still thought the scariest thing about Cedar Pines Motel was that old man. I was wrong. The girl at the window room 12 was at the very end of the row. The light above the door glowed a dull yellow, flickering on and off. The paint on the door was peeling. A dark water stain stretched along the bottom. I opened the door and stepped inside, and immediately felt cold. Not the kind of cold from air conditioning, but a cold that seeped out of the walls, from the floor, from the dead, motionless air in the room. Inside, there was a double bed, an old TV, a small table, a landline phone, dark brown curtains, a crooked landscape painting on the wall. Everything looked normal, but the way it all sat there, unmoving, made me feel like I was in a place that hadn't known the living for a very long time. I checked the bathroom. White tiles, a large mirror, an old sink. Across the mirror was a long, faint streak, like someone had once dragged a wet finger straight down the center. I wiped it away, locked the door, turned off the TV, lay down. I thought I'd only close my eyes for a few minutes, but then I woke up. because of the knocking. Knock, knock, knock. My eyes opened. The digital clock beside the bed read 12:47 a.m. The knocking came again. Knock, knock, knock. Not from the door, from the window. I sat upright. Every nerve in my body tightened. I walked toward the curtain, and when I was about an arm's length away, I glanced down at the edge of it. A pair of small feet, bare, caked in mud, standing right outside. I yanked the curtain open. Outside the glass stood a little girl. Her hair was black, long, soaking wet, clinging to her face. She wore a pale yellow nightgown. Her skin was deathly pale. Her lips were bluish, and she was smiling, not like a child, but a smile stretched far too wide, wrong, twisted, like someone had pulled the corners of her mouth too far apart. She pressed her small hand against the glass, and even though her lips didn't move, I still heard a whisper right beside my ear. "Let me in." I stumbled backward. When I looked again, there was no one outside the window, only rain, and the faint print of a small hand on the glass. The figures behind the windows. I grabbed the key, threw the door open, and bolted outside. The walkway along the rooms was pitch black. Rain slanted across the concrete corridor. I nearly ran toward the front office. Then I heard it, a child's voice, very soft, very close. "Mister." I spun around. No one. Just the dark row of rooms and the swing set at the far end of the yard, creaking back and forth. I walked faster. The voice came again. "I'm so cold." Closer this time, right beside me. I started running. And then, a TV in room 9 flickered on. Blue light spilled through the curtains. Then room 8 lit up. Then 7. Then 6. Within seconds, every room in the row was glowing. But there wasn't a single human sound. No doors opening, no footsteps, no voices. Only the cold blue light of the TVs and the feeling that something, many things, were standing behind those windows, watching me run past. I pounded on the office door. No answer. I shoved it open and stepped inside. Dark. The chair behind the counter was empty. The guest book lay open. A small desk fan turned slowly, but the old man was gone. Behind the counter, a door stood slightly ajar. I walked toward it, pushed it open. The manager was sitting on a bed in the small back room, his back facing me. I was about to speak when he said first, "I told you not to look at it." I froze. He slowly turned his head. His face was pale. His hair was soaked. Water dripped down his collar. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept in years. Then he whispered, "She doesn't like being left outside." And then, from the darkness behind him in that room, came the sound of a child laughing. Soft, quiet, but so close it made my scalp prickle. I turned and ran. I sprinted to my car, shoved the key in, started the engine. The headlights swept across the row of rooms, and that's when I saw them. Behind every window, someone was standing. Men, women, elderly, young, pale faces, wide, unblinking eyes, perfectly still, all of them staring at me, like guests who had died long ago but never managed to leave. I slammed the gas and sped off, but at the exit, she was there again, standing right in front of the car, wet hair, pale dress, head tilted to one side. Then she lifted her face. Her eyes were completely black. Her mouth stretched open, unnaturally wide. And from that darkness came multiple voices at once. "Stay." The headlights cut out. The entire motel plunged into darkness. And when the lights came back, she was gone. The motel had burned down. Long ago, I drove straight back onto the highway. I didn't dare look in the rearview mirror. It wasn't until nearly 20 minutes later that I stopped at a 24-hour gas station. The night clerk there was named Luis. When he saw how pale I was, he asked if I was okay. I asked him if he knew a place called Cedar Pines Motel. He stared at me for a long time. Then he said, "That's not possible." I told him everything. When I finished, Luis poured me a cup of coffee and said, "Cedar Pines burned down years ago." According to him, and the stories the locals still whispered. Back in the late 80s, a family of 3 had stopped there during a storm. The next morning, the mother was found dead in the bathroom, and the young daughter, Emily, had vanished. No body, no trace. After that night, guests at the motel began hearing a child knocking on doors, hearing their names called out in the hallway, seeing muddy footprints in the bathroom, seeing a soaked little girl standing outside the window. Then people started disappearing. More and more strange things happened. And in 1993, the entire motel went up in flames in the middle of the night. No one ever rebuilt it. The next morning, I went back there with Luis. The place where I had stayed the night before was nothing but blackened ruins. No front desk, no electricity, no room 12. Just cracked concrete foundations, collapsed, burned walls, a rusted swing frame, overgrown weeds. I stood there frozen in the middle of it all. In my jacket pocket, I still had the key to room 12. I walked over to the spot where my room had been. On a broken patch of brick, the number 12 was still faintly visible, and beneath the mud, I found a small yellow hair clip. At that exact moment, a child's laughter echoed from beyond the fence. I turned around. No one there. But in the mud in front of me, small, wet footprints began to appear one by one. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps, leading straight toward where room 12 had once stood. I ran, but the horror didn't stay behind at Cedar Pines. It followed me home. What follows those who have seen it? After that night, I started hearing knocking. Always 3 knocks. Knock, knock, knock. At the window of my apartment, on the bathroom mirror, on my car window when there was no one outside. I woke up many nights at exactly 12:47 a.m. One morning on the bathroom floor, there were small wet footprints leading from the door to the sink, then disappearing. Another night, the TV in the living room turned on by itself. White static filled the screen, and within that static I saw the hallway of Cedar Pines and the door to room 12 slowly opening. I moved. I quit long-haul driving. I stopped sleeping in the dark. But it didn't matter. Years later, I went back through old records about Cedar Pines. I found an old photograph of the front desk from when the motel was still operating. Behind the counter was the same old manager I'd met. And in the reflection on the glass behind him, there stood a little girl in the rain. Black hair, a pale dress, a twisted smile. Last month, while I was living in Arizona, a place where it almost never rains, I heard knocking again on the back glass door. Knock, knock, knock. I sat frozen in the living room, too afraid to turn around. Then I heard that voice, soft, childlike, ice cold. I'm cold. I didn't look at the door. I didn't answer. I thought if I stayed silent, it would go away. But then, from the hallway behind me came the sound of wet footsteps. Soft, slow. One by one, small footprints appeared on the floor, moving closer to me. Then they stopped. The couch across from me slowly sank, as if someone had just sat down. The TV turned on. On the screen, I saw myself sitting in the living room, and standing right behind me was that little girl. That's when I finally understood. Whatever was at Cedar Pines was never trapped in the motel. It follows those who have seen it, those who have heard it call, those who let it know they were afraid. So if one night on a dark stretch of highway in America, you see an old roadside motel with a flickering vacancy sign in the rain, keep driving. Don't stop. And if, after midnight, you hear knocking on your window, if there's a little girl with wet hair standing out there smiling, asking to be let in, then please never open the door. Follow and subscribe to my channel. I'll take you with me into the horrors that lie beyond.